Okay, so good morning. I'm gonna start now. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mohammed Medhat Kataia from Egypt. How are you all? I hope you're fine. And I'm gonna start today talking about biominimalistic features in endodontics, a little bit of concept, and I hope you enjoy that. And of course, after the lecture, you are most welcome for an open discussion. We can have questions and answers. Actually, you can write the questions in your comments, and I'm going to answer them immediately after the lecture. So now I'm going to share the screen, show you the lecture. I hope you enjoy it. See. Good morning. Have a nice day. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself. Associate Professor of Endodontics, also head of Endodontic Department in the British University in Egypt. First of all, I'd like to thank Becker for making this lecture possible. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. And I'm going to start with just saying, please stay safe, take care of yourself. That's the most important thing. Okay, today I'm going to minimalism. And it's a very interesting topic as it shows us the importance of conserving tooth structure as much as possible and when to conserve and when not to conserve. Before I start, I want to say that saving tooth is a multidisciplinary approach. It's not dependent on one specialty. But when root canal is scheduled for treatment, proper restoration of this tooth is essential because there are two terms used in success of treatment and survival, and they are completely different. Success is an accomplishment. That means that if a patient comes to you with a collapse or treatment and operation is of the essence. Because root canal treatment is independent when it comes to success, but restoring this root canal treated tooth is a pillar for survival of your success. Bear in mind that while doing a root canal treatment, you have to think of the future. Don't think about now that you're just wanting to heal this tooth, you just want to remove the infection. Think future-wise. In your root canal treatment, that might increase the survival of this tooth. Okay? So this study shows the importance of the restoration of properly done root canal treatment. They say that the highest success rate shown in the systemic view when you have done adequate endodontic treatment followed by adequate restoration. What was interesting is that in both of these situations, success rate was. What are these situations? You do an inadequate endodontic treatment with adequate restoration, it will give you the same success rate as when you do an adequate endodontic treatment with an inadequate restoration. It shows you the importance of trying to keep these elements. So, when I talk about survival, I'm talking about a diverse process. So you have to complete two steps successfully endodontic procedures and restorative procedures. Another study in the Brazilian Dental Journal in 2018 showed that when removing tooth structure either in endodontic or restorative procedures, you drastically compromise the internal strength of this tooth. Compromising the internal strength of this tooth will definitely decrease the survival. So the conclusion of this study showed us that we must remove biological healthy structure and this stress on what we call the pericervical dentine. Pericervical dentine is an essential consideration for survival of the tooth. It's a perimeter of the dentine above and below the cervical line. So this was back to 2011 when the access cavity principles was again mentioned. And one of the most important principles of all is conservation of tooth structure. You must conserve tooth structure as much as possible because conservation will definitely more survival rates. Why? Because we know that no restorative material will ever replace the mechanical characters of the dentine. So you must as much to tooth structure. This is why recent cavity designs were described in the cavity designs like truss or what we call orifice-directed dentine conservation. Also, I apologize for the use. Caries-directed access. Caries-directed access is described as trying to reach the pelvic through the caries cavity instead of violating another surface like the occlusal surface to have a straight path to your canal. So recent technology has helped us to reach the pelvic canal space from the caries direction instead of opening another hole in another surface of the tooth and drastically compromising the strength of the tooth. This approach has helped this patient to avoid a lot of damage in his tooth structure, and eventually it was restored by resin composite restoration instead of being restored by full coverage crown and reducing the pericervical dentine from the outside. While dentine-directed or orifice-directed dentine conservation, also known as truss access, is described as opening two slots in the occlusal surface of a lower molar, one slot over the mesial canals, slot over the distal canals. This will bring us likely to the orifices of our canals and reduce the damage in the occlusal surface. Leaving a truss between the buccal wall and the lingual wall will definitely decrease what we call flexing. Cuspal flexing in lower molars is one of the major reasons for vertical root fractures or splits. So this truss will definitely prevent cuspal flexing. Another contracted access cavity described as the ninja access or an ultra-conservative cavity, which is opening a hole just enough for a file to enter and try to go through the two canals. Okay, what did the studies say about these access cavities? First of all, 2017, you must know that there was no difference in the stresses between contracted endodontic access and access. This is the first. So, if I were you, I'd rather go with the contracted endodontic access than open any access, which will limit my vision, my instrumentation and decrease my success rate. Not my survival, but success rate. So, since there is no difference between the contracted endodontic access and the ninja access in the strength resistance of this tooth, I'd rather go with the contracted endodontic access. Why? Because there was an extreme difference in the strength between the traditional endodontic axis and the contractile axis. Preservation of this much of the dentine over the suffix here has increased or significantly. So, sorry for the bad sound. Actually, we're receiving that the sound is not clear enough. So we're gonna do the presentation live now with you guys with me. The problem, the videos will show a little bit of lag, but you can see them again in a video uploaded on the Woodpecker page. But if you can't hear, so the voice now, but I can go to the presentation immediately. Here we are, and I'm gonna start from because of the lag. So share screen, and share screen. So what we were talking about is that when you're trying to save teeth, it's a multidisciplinary approach. You can't go saving teeth with a single specialty. So if you're an endodontist, you're going to do the root canal part, the restorative dentist will do the restoration part. So each of us has to respect their specialty, because when a tooth is losing, it's weakened, and this means that must tooth structure to ensure what we call survival. And this is what I was talking about. There's a difference between success and survival. And you must know that success is the immediate result that you will have. The immediate result that you will treat your patient, you will reach the healing point where you'll find that there's no pain, no signs, and this is the root canal treatment. And you can accomplish this within one visit, no problem. But in which manner you will do the root canal treatment that will ensure the survival of this tooth furthermore. So we have to properly do a root canal treatment to ensure the survival of the tooth. And this is what I'm going to talk about today. So before I carry on further, I please need you to write on the comments if the sound is clear enough now or not. So would we please share with each other? Is the sound clear? Okay. So, yeah, great. Thank you for that. So, to move on further, root canal therapy, it's an independent process. Yes, we know that. But it's an independent process that will guarantee your success, but it will not guarantee your survival. And this is what we are aiming for. While doing root canal therapy, we want to ensure the success, of course, and also try to help the survival rate of this tooth. Because proper restoration and leaving enough amount of tooth structure is very important to ensure survival. So this is a study. You can find this study online in the Evidence-Based Center in the American Dental Association. And they stated that what was clear, that the highest success rate for root canal treated teeth was when we done a proper root canal treatment and a proper restoration. But what was a surprise for us is that the success rate was equal when we did a proper restoration, when poor root canal was done. It was equal in success rate than when we did a poor restoration with a proper root canal treatment. What I want to say is that both are very important and both are of the essence, and success and survival of the tooth is dependent on the success of each small step you're doing in endodontic treatment and in restorative procedures. Here in the Brazilian Dental Journal, as I said earlier, they said that the strength of the tooth was drastically compromised when removing dentine in endodontic procedures and in restorative procedures.
So what we are aiming is to remove as much as little of dentine during root canal treatment, so that the restorative dentist won't need to do a full coverage crown and remove more dentine during restorative procedures. So what we're aiming is to preserve the pericervical dentine. What's the pericervical dentine? As I was saying in the video earlier, and I'm going to repeat it again because I know that the voice wasn't clear. What I was saying is that the pericervical dentine is one of the most important structures that will help preserve and survive this tooth. So the pericervical dentine actually is 3 millimeters above and below the cervical line, and it's very important that we preserve as much as possible. And any increase in removal of tooth structure during access cavity will definitely lead to a drastic increase of stress on the pericervical dentine. We have to return to our mentioned concept, which is conserve as much as possible of the tooth structure. This is the most important principle of them all. I know we need to prepare and open straight access, but we have to return to the most important concept, which is the conservation of tooth structure. So, conservation of tooth structure led us to try the biominimalistic trends in endodontics, which started in 2012, and they tried to be following the principle that no restorative material whatsoever will replace the characters of lost dentine. So you have to move from the traditional access that we all know to the biominimalistic concept. And when I say biominimalistic concept, I'm not talking about the pictures that are present here online. No, I'm talking about try to remove as little as possible when you are doing an access cavity. Just remove what you need to remove, not more. You don't have to have straight line accesses to the orifices anymore. As we'll see, I was saying earlier in the video that there are several types of biominimalistic approaches. Here we have, for example, caries directed access cavity, in which this lower premolar had a caries exposure through the buccal surface as a class 5, as you can see here as a issue. And I approached this root canal treatment from the buccal surface. And due to the help of the recent heat-treated wires, we were able to do the root canal treatment without any transportation. So what did I do here? What I did is I conserved the dentine and the enamel in the occlusal surface. I did not touch them because, as you can clearly see, it's a sound tooth. And so by this, I prevented this patient from doing a crown, a full coverage crown, and we preserved the pericervical dentine. We just treated this tooth with putting a resin restoration in the class 5 over here. Another type of access cavity is the orifice-directed dentine conservation, or what we call the truss access. What's the truss access? The truss access is opening a slot over the mesial roots and a slot over the distal root. So from the mesial slot, we can access the mesiobuccal root canal and the mesiolingual root canal. But in this slot also, we can reach if there is one canal or two canals. So why did we leave the slot or the truss between the buccal and the lingual wall? As we all know, we have something that's called cuspal deflection. And cuspal deflection is one of the main reasons of vertical root fractures. So leaving a truss between the buccal wall and the lingual wall is definitely one of the most important things to do to prevent any cuspal deflection. So more types of conservative access cavity was released in the market, like the Ninja access or the ultra conservative access. The Ninja access actually is a very small or minute access cavity that you can just reach the orifices through it. But it's a very small access cavity, and not all clinicians were able to follow this access. Furthermore, they found that there was no difference in the increase in strength between the ninja axis and the contracted axis. So if you want to increase the strength of the tooth, just move from the traditional to the contracted axis. You don't have to go for the ninja axis anymore, because there is no significant increase in strength between the ninja and the contracted axis. You just have to try to contract your teeth, your axis cavity. Okay, so am I moving so fast, or is it okay? Hope it's okay. Moving forward, again, what I'm saying is you don't have to go for the ninja axis. You just have to go from the traditional, the axis cavity that we all know, the one that we extend to prevent, the one that we extend to avoid any missed canals. We have to move from this shape to the contracted axis. You have to just preserve your soffits. What are the soffits? Soffits are the dentin and enamel structure that are above the pulp horns in this area, just where I'm pointing. These are the soffits. Contracted axis is trying to decrease the removal of dentin and enamel, preservation of the soffits, to decrease the stress on the pericervical dentin. This is much more important than going to the ninja axis. So, some studies show that when we go for a truss axis, as you can see here, a slot in the mesial and a slot in the distal, a lot of pulp tissue was left in the chamber uncleaned and undebrided. And this is a problem, of course. I support cleaning and debriding the pulp tissue. But yet, this study was a histological study. It was very important. They tried to clean the pulpal tissue, and they said that we cleaned more pulpal tissue with the traditional axis. But another study, due to this cuspal deflection, in 2019, showed that leaving a truss between the cuspal buccal wall and the lingual wall was very important. And it significantly increased the strength of this tooth. This is very important because due to recent cleaning techniques like the flexible sonic activating tips, you can go into the pulp chamber and properly clean and debride and dissolve all pulpal tissue. And these recent tools have helped us in such cases, because if you have a truss and you want to clean below this truss, you can pre-bend this tool and sonically activate it. You can use a lot of recent activating techniques. Even if you just increase the volume of your irrigant, you'll definitely dissolve all the pulpal tissue within the chamber. You do not need to remove the truss to clean clearly, because through all the studies that have done, that were done and published in proper magazines, they show that the increase in strength is significantly different between the truss and the normal axis cavity. So I am pro with the truss axis cavities. I love to leave the option to the patient whether or not he should put a full coverage crown. Because if you open a truss axis and you leave this truss between the buccal and lingual wall, you can give the patient the option not to grind his teeth all around and decrease the pericervical dentin. You can leave the tooth mechanically strong with normal and dentin and enamel. So moving forward, talking about studies that are with contracted axis cavities and opposing to contracted axis cavities. So studies said that in 2018, and it's not just one study, they are multiple studies, they showed that with contracted axis cavities, you might have a little bit increased transportation of canals because the file are under a lot of stress, the penetration axis. And they said also that if you're not using ultrasonics and not using microscope, you can face missed canals. And this is very important because you do not want to conserve tooth structure and go to another mishap like the missed canal, because this will lead to a total failure for your work. And we need to work properly. I want to conserve, yes, but I do not want to put myself liable to another error. So What I'm suggesting is that we have a solution for all this, because also, as we know, nowadays we have the heat-treated wires and the control memory wires, which will never transport your canals, because these wires have less restoring forces. They do not want to go back to their original size. So when you open a buccal-directed access cavity like this, you're not going to face stress on your file, because you have a recent technology, which is the heat-treated wire and the control memory wire. So regarding the transportation, your file does not have the restoring forces that want it to become its original shape again. But what about missed canals? Beruti et al. In 2009 suggested that cone beam computed tomography is a very reliable method for identification of missed canals. And since then, the softwares of the cone beam computed tomography has been developing very hastily, especially in the root canal field. And nowadays, they're doing like the implants. They're doing surgical stents called micro-guided endodontics. These stents you can place on the teeth, and they have small holes that you can penetrate through it and go directly to the root canal. You don't have to open an access anymore. You can just open a very small opening, just wide as your orifice. As you can see here, this is a very small guide, I hope, placed on the patient's mouth, and it has a hole in this direction, the red line, and this hole will direct you directly into the root canal. So you see here now your access cavity, actually, it's a small spot that will direct you to the office. And this has a lot of clinical applications, because recently, first of all, you can know the length of your root canal treatment even before you start your root canal therapy, because the softwares of the cone beam nowadays will show us the lateral exit of our apical foramen. So you can have a very, very accurate length for your root canal, even more accurate than the locators, because now you can see the lateral exit of your root canal. Another clinical application, and this was a case study published in the Journal of Endodontics in 2018, and they used this surgical endodontic stent to be able to enter to the calcified canal and reach the patent apical third. And this is very interesting, because before the micro-guided endodontics and the ability to enter to the patent part through a totally blocked or calcified canal, we used to go for surgery. In calcified canals, we used to go for surgery. We didn't go for trying to penetrate the root canal blindly. So it was much better to go for surgery instead of doing a lot of other errors. And nowadays, I can tell the patient that you do not need to go to surgery. We can do a guide, that this guide will guide us through ultrasonic tips directly into the patent part of the canal. So, of course, the technology has changed a lot in our studies. Now we can use this guide to be much more conservative than going through surgical approaches or going through vast errors or perforation in the root canal. Another clinical application, other than calcified canals, you can also use these stents by treating the lower anterior teeth. As you can see here, so case report, lower anterior teeth are very narrow in a mesiodistal direction. And if this patient is undergoing any type of smile makeover or a smile design, and the restorative dentist wants to change all the facial properties of these teeth, he's going to need to pass dentine and enamel structure left. So you have a very narrow tooth, mesiodistal direction, and the restorative dentist is going to work, he's going to remove more enamel dentine. So you need to be conservative. So you do a stent, you place it on the teeth, and you have holes that will direct you directly into the root canals, into the orifices. So you do not need to open extensively either in a mesiodistal direction or in a buccolingual direction. In 2019, actually, this stent was used in another case. The case was that they didn't have any accessibility for the upper second molar and upper first molar, and they say that the patient had very limited mouth opening, and they had to enter from the buccal direction. So instead of entering through the buccal direction, they made a stent, this stent shown here in the study, and this stent had a hole that directed them from the buccal wall to each of the canals. So these stents nowadays are not only used for conservatism or for biominimalism, they are used for calcified canals, they are used for limited mouth openings. You can do the stents through microguided endodontics and go into your canals directly. And this is very simple and very easy. And as you see in the slide before, it's accurate, fast, and operator independent. Like for this case, for example, I had a total calcified distal canal and I had internal resorption. I tried to go first without a cone beam, and it led up that I made a huge ledge in the distal root. After I did a stent in the cone beam, you see this is the ledge. I reached my working length safely and I obturated the canal. This was the calcified canal. This was the internal resorption. And this is the ledge that I made when I went in blindly. As you can see, I was going to go for a perforation, and thank God I didn't. And here is a lateral canal filled by the bioceramic sealer I used, because I filled this space with MTA. So as you can see, there are a lot of clinical applications for the cone beam, for conservatism, for calcified canals, for lower anteriors and thin canals or narrow mesiodistal pulp chambers, for a lot of applications. Here you can see a mesial truss access cavity, and in this access cavity I left a truss of dentine between the mesial and the distal wall, and the access was a caries directed access in the distal here, but I had a huge pulp stone between the mesial root and the distal root. So with the sonic tips, I tried troughing to remove the pulp stone. I troughed the mesial as much as possible. After a while, you'll find the pulp stone exiting the distal compartment. Here you see something exiting the distal compartment. This was the pulp stone that was attached to the floor of the tooth pulp chamber, sorry. And I wanted to show you that even if you leave a truss, you not only can you clean the pulp tissue, but you can also remove the stones present within the pulp chamber. And here's the stone. Here's before the stone, and here's after the stone. And now I'm going to remove the stone. Okay, the stone is removed. After removal of the stone. Now you can go for irrigation and activation and clean the chamber as much as you like. Pulp chamber is clean as it should be. Okay, another access cavity. Also, this is another truss access. As I told you, I am pro with the truss and leaving a truss access. This was a mesial caries directed access cavity, and I left the truss and I opened another distal access to the distal canals directly. Of course, you have to replace the normal mechanical cleaning of the burr with a lot of activation. You have to put a lot of sodium hypochlorite volume, and you have to activate a lot, even during preparation, even before you finish. So during your preparation, you're activating. After you finish, you're activating. Before you enter the canals, you're activating. Now I'm taking the length, working, of course, with heat-treated wires, because heat-treated wires have less restoring forces, as I said before. They can be directed, pre-curved, directed into the canals easily, and they do not need to go back to their original shape, so there will be very little stress on the files. Here you can see I was troughing for middle mesial canal, and I didn't find any middle mesial canal, but this also proves that without ultrasonics, you cannot go for contracted accesses. The distal truss had a single orifice with 2 root canals in this case. So I had 2 root canals in this case for the distal, and I didn't find any trouble reaching both canals through a big single orifice. Here's the X-ray, single orifice, 2 canals, and single apical foramen. So finally, we're gonna stick with the contracted endodontic access cavities, and we have to face a challenge. The challenge is you have to locate all your canals, and this can be done simply with the use of the cone beam computed tomography. You have to debride all pulpal tissue, and as we all know, the volume of irrigant will increase. You have to use activation with ultrasonics, and this will help you debride all the pulpal tissue. Before all that, you have to avoid any iatrogenic complications. So, some of the rules placed by Martin Troop in 2015 regarding the minimal invasive dentistry. First of all, if you don't have accessibility, remove restorative material before removing tooth structures. Second, remove the enamel before you remove dentine, because dentine is the bulk of the tooth. It gives it the main strength. Third of all, remove from the occlusal tooth structure before you remove the pericervical dentine. You have to preserve the pericervical dentine as much as possible, because pericervical dentine is the pillar for the survival of this tooth. The most important rule, as I said earlier, is do all that without doing iatrogenic errors. So to be able to do that, you have some requirements. First of all, you have to work under magnification. You have to use ultrasonics. You have to use control or heat-treated wires to decrease the transportation, and better to use the cone beam computed tomography technology in order to ensure that you have reached all your root canals. Troughing is very helpful with ultrasonics. You can trough to find the mesiobuccal canals, mesiobuccal 2, and even if you're not opening conservative, because in my opinion, after having said that we need to be biominimalistic or conservative, you cannot leave an area that is suspicious for presence of extra anatomy and not trough. If you find an isthmus anywhere in any tooth, you have to trough it. We have the mind track of troughing only for the MB2, which is very wrong. Any isthmus must be troughed, because you can be surprised with the anatomy that you can find hidden beneath the isthmus. For example, in this case, there was an isthmus between the palatal canal and the distobuccal canal. And I had to go and trough more after I finished my preparation. And after troughing with ultrasonics during the access cavity, and here's an access that is not conservative at all, I found that there was an extra root canal between the distal and the palatal canal. And it was extremely clear over here, the X-ray. after the post-obturation X-ray, I had mesiobuccal 1, mesiobuccal 2, and 3 distal canals. The palatal, distobuccal 2, and distobuccal 1. So I need you to remove the mind track of just tracking the mesiobuccal 2 and try to place a new mind track, which is we have to trough every isthmus that we find. And if this means that you will need to increase your contracted axis or increase removal of dentine, you have to do it. Because as I said earlier, we cannot conserve the structure and lead to a missed canal. In this case, I would have missed the distobuccal 2 and it would have led to failure afterwards. So please use ultrasonics as much as possible in the axis cavities because, as I said, you can be surprised with the amount of root canals that you can find. Like in this premolar, for example, I would have never reached this depth. You see, the furcation started nearly mid-root. So a contra and a burr would have definitely perforated my side walls. I had to go inside with ultrasonics. I had to trough with ultrasonics to find the buccal, mesiobuccal, and distobuccal canals in the buccal roots. This is the upper first premolar, and it was a trifurcated premolar, but the furcation started very deep. And this is very popular now to find a three-rooted premolar or a trifurcated premolar. We can find it around 25 to 30% of our cases. And this is why you have to incorporate the use of ultrasonics in your therapy, because it would make life easier. Because when you trough deeply with the ultrasonic, you can clearly see the orifices of your root canals and still be conservative with your axis. But if you go with a burr or a stone, you'll definitely make more damage and not be facing the concept of biominimalism. Okay, so this was all talking about the axis cavity and the effect of conserving dentine on the pericervical dentine and the survival rate of the tooth. What about the radicular portion? I'm gonna state some facts, and I'm gonna tackle these facts to try to make you consider being more conservative. So, first fact, this systematic review, and as we all know that systematic reviews are one of the top in the evidence-based pyramid, and they said that whatever size your mechanical preparation ends, you'll never be able to finish all the root canal microbiota through mechanical preparation. So increasing the size of our preparation after being able to reach with our irrigant to the full length is nonsense. Okay, it's very important to know that you do not have to increase the size, because as we have already known in this review, as you increase the size, you will not be able to remove all the microbiota. Yes, this is true. And it's true also that we have a lot of different anatomies, and difficult anatomies like this case by my fellow colleague, Dr. Amira Galal, and this case by me, they have extreme curvatures, root dilacerations. Here we have a distobuccal root that's facing us buccally, dilacerated mesiobuccal root, a hook-shaped lower wisdom with distal root. So depending on just increasing the size of your preparation to remove the microbes is nonsense. So please do not depend on increasing the mechanical size. You have to depend on active irrigation, because fact number 2, and this is a very important analysis, you can find it in 2019, said that cleaning was equal. Cleanliness was equal. If you prepare the canal for size 20, but you used activation, was equal to what? Was equal that if you place the canal with size 40 and just do passive irrigation. So active agitation of your irrigant is very important. and it will make you avoid increasing the size of your root just to irrigate passively. And we have a lot of types of activation or agitation. We have the flexible tips, we have the bendable nickel titanium active tips, we have sonic, we have ultrasonic, and we have even the new brush files. And these are brush files, a concept introduced by Ruddle earlier in 2005. And the brush files, they are very feasible and accessible, and you don't need any special tools to use them. So you have a lot of activation methods. You do not need to do passive irrigation anymore. Please try to activate your irrigant, because this will make you avoid enlarging your root canal. Of course, regarding the taper, I'm going to talk about a systematic review tackling the taper exactly. But I want to say that I want you to remove the concept of the increased taper and the x-ray that looks extremely wide at the orifice that you would like to see, because this is a violation of the pericervical dentine. Increasing the taper of the tool too much will cause decreased dentine and tooth structure at the pericervical dentine. In this area specifically, the restorative dentist will need to reduce from the external surface in order to place a finishing line for his crown. So you see what you're doing here. You're increasing the taper of the root as much as you can and leaving a thin layer of dentine, and the restorative dentist will come afterwards and he will reduce the dentine from outside, and you'll have a very thin layer of pericervical dentine that will definitely not ensure the survival of this tooth. So please change your mind from great taper to minimal taper, because in this also research, this is a basic technology research in 2019, they said that you do not need to increase the taper than size 40 taper 4, because with size 40 taper 4 you have reached the maximum amount of volume of irrigant that can reach the apical third. Increasing more than taper 4 is nonsense, because with size 40 taper 4 and using the negative pressure irrigation technique, you will have the maximum amount of volume of irrigation in the apical third. So please change from the increased taper to the minimal taper. So my take-home message is we need to rephrase from removal as little as possible to removal as little as necessary. And please select your cases properly. Not every case should be contracted access. You have to follow the rules of biominimalistic dentistry. And in order to work in a contracted manner, please have all the requirements. Have your magnification, have your ultrasonics and activation techniques. Work with knowledge, because knowledge is power. And you have to have knowledge of your anatomy before entering to the tooth. Thank you very much. And I'd like to take this chance to announce of the Pan Endo 2021 in December of 2021. And I hope we are all safe by then, and you are staying at home and staying safe. I hope that there is no medical emergencies anywhere, and you can come and have a nice time in Egypt in the Pan Endo waiting for you. So now I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to return to live, and I'm ready for all your questions. I'm going to try to select the questions from the okay. So do we need to be selective? Let me start question number 1. Do we need to be selective about the location of caries in the caries directed axis? Okay, I showed 3 cases actually of a caries directed axis in a video, and I can replay it again. And you can find it on the site of Woodpecker. One of them I entered from the buccal surface. The other one I entered from the mesial surface. The third one I entered from the distal surface. the thing is, you cannot choose where to enter when it's a caries driven, because caries can be at any surface. It can be at the palatal surface. It can be at the buccal surface. So it's just the idea of following your pathologic exposure. You have a pathologic exposure in the buccal surface. So I'm going to go through this exposure to my orifices. Okay? So no, you don't have to be selective. You just have to guarantee that you didn't leave any missed canals. I go with a buccal approach if I have a buccal class 5 caries. And the most important thing is I have to ensure that I have located all canals. This is the most important thing. Okay, so how to make the dental occlusal is intact because from the bottom. Okay, the other question is they are stating that it's good to have a buccal approach, but how to make sure that the occlusal dentine is intact. Actually, with magnification and with micromirrors, the micromirrors that we use in retrosurgeries, we have that here. And of course, you have that over there. The micromirrors can show you with magnification the inner part of your chamber after you finished cleaning. So if you're talking about that you have undermined occlusal dentine, this undermined occlusal dentine can be supported by adhesive resin approach, because adhesive resin approach is the best approach for filling the chamber. Because if we leave a void or if we leave a gap, this is a stress razor. We call it stress razor. It can lead to fracture. That's why they suggested, the restorative dentists suggested that we have to go for adhesive restorative approach if I'm doing a contracted access. If we put a flowable adhesive restorative material, it will ensure that you've filled all the gaps, but before you apply bonded restorations, you have to make sure that you have healthy dentine. If that was your question, this is very simple through magnification and micromirrors that you ensure that all your dentine is clean and healthy. And afterwards, you can go for adhesive restoration, so you will leave no gaps and you will ensure that you have no undermined enamel. So moving to question number 3. What tip should I use to trough the isthmus? Okay, so what tip should you use? There are a lot of different brands, and they're all equally the same and equally efficient. There are access cavity tips, and there are intraradicular cavity tips. So we'll definitely go with the increased taper access cavity tips. And you have a lot of systems, as I said before. I can't recommend a certain system in particular, but you can go for access cavity tips, because access cavity tips, they are all equally the same in all companies. It doesn't matter, because errors are extremely rare during ultrasonic troughing in access cavity. Maximum, if you're troughing blindly, you can do a small perforation, and this can be immediately sealed. But this is not the problem of the tip. You can buy any tip from any company. I recommend access cavity tips, and it's very easy to trough with it. Okay, I'm going for question number 4. What irrigating substance? Okay, so if you're activating your irrigation and you're talking about what irrigation should you use, you have to go for sodium hypochlorite, because if you're not working with sodium hypochlorite, you're not making endo. And sodium hypochlorite, some people were asking what's the concentration. So I'm telling you, it's the concentration should be half. It's better to use it half than full concentration, because full concentration and half concentration has the same microbiologic inhibition strength. The thing is, with the full concentration, you'll have more dissolving ability. But I'd like to use the half concentration because if I use the full concentration, you will have a problem. If you have sodium hypochlorite accident, it will be extremely severe. So use the half concentration, but increase your volume of your irrigant and increase the time and activation. So with contracted access, of course, you have to do half concentration sodium hypochlorite and you have to activate. Okay, this is question number 4. Now I'm gonna see more questions. What are indications of using truss or contracted access? Okay, regarding the indications, it's not an indication and contraindication. The principle of biominimalism or conservative approach, it's a principle. It's not an indication or contraindication. So you don't have an indication, but you have requirements in order to start with the contracted access. The requirements are that you must work with magnification. Contracted access or truss access or caries directed access, they are all accesses that can be done in any tooth. But while selecting your access, you have to have the requirements, which are the magnification, the proper wire of the nickel titanium. You have to have absolute knowledge of your internal anatomy, and you have to have activation device for your irrigation solution, because you're leaving undermined pulpal tissue. You won't be able to mechanically remove all these tissue. You have to dissolve them. You have to increase your irrigation to increase your volume. And you have to agitate your irrigant. So regarding back to your question, there are no indications. As I said, in my take-home message, you have to change your concept from removal as little as possible to removal as little as necessary. As little as necessary. Yani, you don't have to remove as little as possible rather than remove as little as necessary. Every tooth is a candidate for contracted access cavity. But understand your limits, have the requirements, and practice. This is more important. So I'm going to, I hope I covered the answer for your question, dear sir. Okay, so okay, so do you have any other questions? Because I've already finished the questions that you've stated in the discussion. I guess we still have 5 minutes. We can go for discussion for any question. Okay, 6% taper in larger canal. What about 6% tapers in larger canals? Okay, to answer you, dear Vivian, okay, Dr. Vivian, the thing is, even if the canal is a little bit larger, like in the palatal of the upper 6, or if a single distal canal in the lower molars, and you find you have a very large canal, increase the apical size until you can reach proper irrigation to the apical third. You do not have to use 6% taper, because the more you leave in the coronal portion, the better. And you have to agree with me on this. Why increase my taper? If I have an increased apical size that can help me reach with maximum amount of irrigant to the apical third, which is the most important part of the root to clean. So why go to taper 6? Why not taper 4? Why not just taper 4? And leave this 2% of dentine to increase the survival of this tooth. It can reach the strength of the normal tooth. This is possible. So I'm not with unnecessary removal. So it will work. It can work. If the canals are large, if the root dentine is large, it can work. But even nowadays, when we put a post in the root canal, first of all, of course, to decrease the crack formation, we remove the gut percha by heating to prevent drilling. And we use a post that matches, a fiber post, of course, that matches the size of my preparation. So, and there are matching posts, by the way, by some of our companies that will match the exact size of your gut perk. I'm not with increasing the taper if I don't need to. Okay, irrigation timing. Now, if you go to the American Dental Association page, you'll have a recommendation, and you'll have recommendations for a lot of things. So the American Dental Association recommends that your irrigation would be 3 minutes of active irrigation in each canal. The 3 minutes should work alternatively with sodium hypochlorite and EDTA, ethylene diamine tetraacetic acid. Okay? 30 seconds of sodium hypochlorite, you put a volume of sodium hypochlorite, leave it for 30 seconds with activation, then flush saline, then put EDTA, 30 seconds with activation. So 30 seconds sodium hypochlorite, 30 seconds EDTA, but in between you have to put saline. What I do is that I put in all canals sodium hypochlorite, I activate 30 seconds, activate 30 seconds, activate 30 seconds, and so on. Then I clear with saline, then I put the EDTA. You have to activate 3 minutes in each canal. Of course, activation has several types. You can even activate with rotary files. Some say that during your preparation with rotary files, this is considered activation. So actually, I like to activate my canals after I finish preparation with the same routine that I told you. 3 minutes each canal, 30 seconds sodium hypochlorite, half concentration, and 30 seconds EDTA. And the 30 seconds is because after 30 seconds, the chlorine ions will be exhausted. The sodium hypochlorite won't be active anymore. So you have to replenish your solution by putting another drop of sodium hypochlorite in your canal. So I hope I answered you properly, Gorv. Thank you for answering question, knowledge and question. Mind. What? The country. Oh, thank you, Rosemaria. Thank you. So I'll be here also if you need any questions. I hope I covered everything. Okay, dear Dr. Ritika, I'm going to answer your question. The question is for all the audience. She was saying that I already mentioned the limitations of the contracted axis, which are the pulp remnants, iatrogenic errors, and missed canals. And she was saying, how can we decide case selection? Okay, so that's why I said the take-home message was remove as little as necessary. You can decide in each case if you need to remove more or not. In Egypt, here, I usually send my case if I am suspicious of extra anatomy. To answer your first question, which is missed canal, if I'm suspicious of extra anatomy, I send it directly for a 3-dimensional image to ensure that I don't have any extra anatomies. Regarding the iatrogenic errors of file separation or transportation due to curved canals, as I mentioned, there are recent innovation in wires. You can use control memory wires or heat-treated wires. Both wires, they do not have the tendency to restore back to their original shape. So they will not be working under stress and they will not transport your canal. They have less restoring forces. So in contracted axis, actually in all my practice, I use heat-treated wires or control memory wires. Nowadays, I do not go back to stiff nickel titanium. So I use heat-treated or control memory wire, so there will never be an iatrogenic error. And you will feel your file. If you're going through a dilaceration, you will feel your file. You'll feel it within your handpiece. You'll feel that it's suffering within the root canal. Then you know that you need to extend your axis a little bit more. Regarding the pulp remnants, I also mentioned that I need to increase the volume of my irrigation and I need to increase the activation methods. And there was a publish in 2018 comparing the time taken between the contracted axis and the traditional axis in completing the root canal therapy. And to answer your question, dear Dr. Ritika, they said that during working with a contracted axis cavity, it takes much longer time to finish your root canal treatment. That's because you take longer time for debridement, longer time for reaching your anatomy safely, and longer time for activation your ergant and increasing the volume of your ergant. I'd rather go with longer time than go with extensive damage in my root canal. So these are the 3 things you were talking about. I hope I covered your question regarding the pulp remnants, regarding the iatrogenic errors and missed canals. So thank you very much, dear all, and goodbye. Please stay safe, stay home. Thank you, Woodpecker, for having me here, and hope to see you all again. Bye-bye.